Alright, so let's talk about Hollow Knight and Silksong for a second. This series has given us one of the most creative and charming bug-filled worlds in gaming. From the Silent Knight to the Fierce Hornet, both protagonists have absolutely carried their games and turned this whole franchise into something special. And with Silksong being such a huge success, you just know that Team Cherry has plenty of room to expand this little universe into something even bigger. Honestly, I don't think any of us would complain if they decided to surprise us with another entry down the line. But here's the thing, it's not just the main characters that shine. Every bug in Hallownest and Farloom feels like they were written with so much care and personality. Some of them are so good that we can totally imagine them starring in their own spin-offs. Whether it's another brutally difficult Metroidvania, a quirky platformer, or even something completely unexpected, we'd be here for it. Today, we're going to dive into which bugs from Hollow Knight and Silksong truly deserve their own games and why they'd absolutely crush it as the star of the show. I'm quickly moving on to the video. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching! Sly is one of those characters that feels like a background figure until you really stop and think about him. On the surface, he is just the tiny shopkeeper that sells you some of the most useful items in Hollow Knight, but his story goes far deeper than that. Once upon a time, Sly was the great nail sage, which means he probably remains the most skilled nail wielder in all of Hallownest. It is almost funny to imagine that this little fly, with a hunchback, is secretly holding onto a massive blade, ready for the day he decides to use it again. What really seals the deal for Sly's legend is his optional boss fight. The moment you challenge him, you realize just how absurdly strong he is. Despite his tiny stature, he moves with precision and speed that puts most other enemies and even bosses to shame. It is one of those fights that makes you think, wow, I had no idea this old shopkeeper could do that. It is proof enough that Team Cherry hid an absolute powerhouse in plain sight, and many players probably walked past him without ever knowing. If Team Cherry decides to give another bug their own spin-off game, Sly feels like a perfect candidate. Making a comically large character as the protagonist would not really fit the Hollow Knight style, but going the opposite direction and making someone small but incredibly powerful could be brilliant. A game centered around Sly's past as the Great Nail Sage, or even his adventures after Hollow Knight, would not only feel fresh, but also build on a character that players already love. Sly may look like just a humble shopkeeper, but in truth, he is one of Hallownest's most fascinating secrets. Green Prince is one of those characters that immediately grabs your attention, not just because of his royal title, but because of the weight his story carries. Like Hornet and the Knight, his position as royalty sets him apart as someone important, but in his case, it feels almost more tragic. He is not the ruler of a vast kingdom, but instead the Prince of Verdania, a small region that has already fallen to ruin. His design makes him stand out, but it is his mysterious past that really demands more answers. What makes Green Prince unforgettable is how heartbreaking his journey is. Over the course of the game, his story is filled with sorrow and loss, ultimately culminating in one of the darkest endings for a character. After being defeated by Hornet and having already lost his partner, it is heavily implied that he takes his own life. It is devastating, and it makes you realize that even in a world filled with strange creatures and dreamlike landscapes, Hollow Knight never shies away from telling deeply human stories. This is exactly why Green Prince deserves more attention in the future. We are not talking about turning his tale into a romance-driven game, but instead a focused experience that explores Verdania, his relationships, and the mystery of why he was imprisoned. It would add layers to a character who already feels so compelling, but unfinished, while giving fans a chance to dive into a part of the world that is still unexplored. Green Prince may be gone, but his story still feels like it has so much left to tell. Cloth is one of those characters who instantly makes you smile when you meet her. She is warm, friendly, and genuinely heroic in her own timid way. Armed with her massive club, she charges into battle not because she is fearless, but because she is searching for that courage she feels she lacks. Her determination is inspiring, and it is easy to root for her every step of the way. But if you choose to befriend her, her journey ends on a heartbreaking note when she sacrifices herself in the fight against the traitor Lord. What makes Cloth so fascinating is the alternative path she can take. If you never befriend her, she does not die. Instead, She survives and decides to leave Hallownest behind to seek a place where she can truly prove her worth. This version of her story feels like the perfect launching point for something bigger. It is almost as if Team Cherry left the door cracked open, giving players just enough to imagine what Cloth's adventures outside of Hallownest might look like. That is why Cloth feels like such a strong candidate for her own game. She already has the mix of bravery, vulnerability, and determination that makes for a compelling protagonist, and she is a fan favorite for good reason. A new title could explore her travels in an unexplored kingdom, giving her the chance to finally find the courage she has been chasing. Instead of her story being cut short in tragedy, Cloth could shine in her own right, showing us just how strong she was always meant to be. Garmin and Zaza are the kind of duo that instantly win you over. Garmin, the aging yet ever-spirited knight of Farloom, carries himself with honor and bravery, while his loyal companion Zaza never leaves his side. Together, they feel like the heart of a classic adventure story. Two humble heroes who have been protecting their land for decades. Their bond is so genuine that it is impossible not to adore them both, and they bring a warmth to Hollow Knight's darker world that feels truly special. Their tale, however, takes a tragic turn in Act 3. When Hornet faces Garmin after his corruption by Void, she is forced to defeat him, leading to his death and leaving poor Zaza behind. It is one of those moments that sticks with you, not just because of the loss itself, but because it makes you realize how much history and heart these two characters carried with them. The ending feels heavy, but it also makes you wonder about the countless adventures they must have shared before everything went wrong. That is exactly why Garmin and Zaza would make for a perfect spin-off. A game that focuses on their earlier journeys could capture a lighter, more adventurous tone compared to the other entries in the series. Garmin's goofy yet noble personality, paired with Zaza's adorable loyalty, would set the stage for something heartfelt and fun, while still keeping that signature Hollow Knight charm. Their story deserves to be more than a tragic ending. It deserves a chance to show the full strength of their companionship. Dung Defender is one of those characters you cannot help but remember, even if it is for reasons you would rather not smell. Once a proud member of the Great Knights of Hallownest, he has now taken on the less glamorous role of guarding the royal waterways, and of course, his piles of dung. At first glance, he feels like a comic relief boss, but the more you learn about him, the more you realize there is a lot of heart behind this bug's bizarre exterior. What makes Dung Defender so special is how much he embodies the spirit of Hollow Knight's world. He is silly and over the top, but he is also loyal, brave, and dedicated to his duty. That balance of humor and genuine emotion is exactly what makes him such a fan favorite. Players love his strange fighting style, his booming personality, and even the fact that he is not afraid to get his hands or his entire body dirty for the sake of what he believes in. That is why a spin-off featuring Dung Defender could work surprisingly well. Team Cherry has never shied away from blending comedy with heartfelt storytelling, and Dung Defender could carry that mix perfectly. A game centered around his adventures, maybe even set during his time as a great knight, would give us more insight into both his backstory and his ridiculous charm. It might smell like trouble, but there is no denying that Dung Defender deserves his chance to shine. Sherma might just be the single most adorable bug to ever appear in a Hollow Knight game. When Silksong launched, the community immediately fell in love with him, and it is not hard to see why. He is this cheerful little pilgrim who cannot help but spread joy wherever he goes. Whether it is through singing or playing music, Sherma has this gift for lifting spirits, even if only for a moment, and in a world as grim as Farloom, that is a rare and precious quality. What makes Sherma so interesting is that he is the complete opposite of the typical Hollow Knight protagonist. He has no fighting skills, no sharp weapon to swing, and no reason to rush headfirst into danger. Instead, his strength comes from his positivity and his music. And honestly, that opens up such a unique opportunity for a different kind of game. Music has always played an important role in Hollow Knight's atmosphere and lore, so it is easy to imagine Sherma's songs carrying some kind of magical or even heroic power. That is why a Sherma spin-off makes so much sense. A rhythm game adventure starring this little guy would be both fresh and perfectly fitting for the series. Imagine exploring new lands, solving puzzles, and overcoming challenges all through the power of music, with Sherma's cheerful personality shining at every turn. He does not need to be a warrior to be a hero, and giving him the spotlight would be a heartwarming change of pace. After all, who could possibly say no to more Sherma content? Quirrell is one of those characters who quietly stole the spotlight in Hollow Knight, even if he never truly got the recognition he deserved. His curious nature and warm personality made him instantly memorable, but his backstory reveals so much more. As one of Monomon the Teacher's apprentices, Quirrell carries a deep connection to the Dreamers and the lore of Hallownest itself. That history alone feels like the perfect foundation for a game dedicated entirely to him. What makes Quirrell stand out is that, unlike so many of the characters we meet, his story stretches far beyond Hallownest. Before the events of Hollow Knight, it is said that he traveled across other regions, wandering as an explorer. That idea alone feels like the ultimate setup for a prequel. Imagine stepping into Quirrell's shoes, discovering strange new lands and ancient mysteries, all while uncovering the events that would eventually lead him back to Hallownest. And let us not forget that Quirrell is more than just a thinker. He is a fighter too. He wields a unique weapon, and the game shows that he is skilled enough to nearly match Hornet in strength. That means he is more than capable of carrying his own quest, both narratively and mechanically. A Quirrell game could combine exploration, combat, and mystery in a way that feels fresh yet completely true to Hollow Knight's spirit. It would give one of the series' most beloved wanderers the spotlight he has always deserved. Chakra is one of those characters who instantly feels larger than life, both figuratively and literally. As a wandering warrior cartographer, she is encountered all over Farloom, and her presence always leaves an impression. A towering paper wasp who wields rings with deadly precision, Chakra is both a fierce fighter and a helpful companion. She is on her own quest to track down her master, but along the way, she never hesitates to lend a hand to anyone in need. That mix of strength and kindness makes her one of Silksong's most iconic side characters. What makes Chakra such a compelling choice for a spin-off is her unique fighting style. The way she uses her rings to strike from a distance and stalk enemies with almost predatory precision is unlike anything we have seen from other protagonists. It would open up exciting gameplay possibilities, blending ranged combat with mobility and tactical positioning. Pair that with her cartographer's spirit of adventure, and you have the perfect recipe for a game that is both action-packed and exploration-driven. The only challenge with Chakra as a playable character is her sheer size. She towers over Hornet, to the point where she has to kneel just to talk to her, and that does create some questions about scale, but honestly, that is an easy fix. The world and its enemies could simply be scaled up around her, turning her height into a feature rather than a flaw. With how striking her design is and how much personality she brings to the story, Chakra feels far too interesting to be left behind without her own playable adventure. Zote the Mighty is easily one of the most unforgettable bugs in Hollow Knight, even if most of that fame comes from how hilariously pitiful he is. He struts around Hallownest claiming to be a legendary hero, yet in reality, he is constantly getting himself captured, beaten, or outshined by the knight. Fans both love and despise him for this contradiction. He is equal parts comic relief, and a reminder that not every self-proclaimed hero is cut out for the job. But here is the thing. Zote's flaws actually make him the perfect candidate for a game of his own. Imagine a story where he is finally forced to put his money where his mouth is, no longer able to just boast and steal credit from others. The humor would practically write itself. But beneath the comedy, there is potential for a surprisingly heartfelt journey. Watching Zote stumble, fail, and maybe, just maybe, grow into the mighty warrior he always believed himself to be would be both hilarious and strangely satisfying. It is also worth noting that Zote was originally intended to be the third playable character in Hollow Knight's Kickstarter campaign. That stretch goal was never reached, but the fact that Team Cherry considered him at all shows they saw the potential. For all we know, there could still be unused concepts tucked away, waiting for a chance to resurface. If there is ever going to be a third entry in the series, Zote feels like the perfect wildcard protagonist to carry it, turning the biggest joke in Hallownest into a legend in his own right. Lace is one of the most fascinating characters introduced in Silksong, and for good reason. She is not simply another bug in Farloom. She is an entity woven entirely from Silk itself. Her connection to Hornet is clear, almost like a cousin or even a sister, and she mirrors Hornet's abilities and presence in a way that makes her feel both familiar and unsettling. Facing her multiple times in battle shows just how central she is to the story, but at the same time, it leaves us wanting to know even more. What sets Lace apart is the sheer potential her design offers for gameplay. Since her very body is made of silk, she could use it in creative ways no other character could. Whether that means weaving weapons mid-battle, manipulating the battlefield, or using silk for traversal in unique patterns. A game centered on Lace would allow Team Cherry to expand on the silk mechanics even further, taking what was already established with Hornet and pushing it into entirely new territory. Lace feels very much like Hornet did in the original Hollow Knight, a crucial character full of mysteries who steals the spotlight whenever she appears. Just as Hornet earned her own title, Lace deserves that same opportunity. Her story has only just begun, and exploring the depths of her identity, her powers, and her place in the world of Farloom could make for a game that is every bit as iconic as the ones that came before it. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.